Hello, my name is Teresa Cannon. I am a GFWC Leads Ambassador from 2023, and I am going to be presenting Speak Up and Stand Out, Mastering the Art of Being Heard. There are two parts to this presentation today. The first one's the technical piece, how to use a microphone, because without a microphone, your voice might literally not be heard. And the second part is about the actual presentation. As we go into microphones, there are four typical types of microphones that you will find, and we're only going to speak about two of them. The two that we're not going to speak about are the floor mics that you will typically find in a theater or some performance-based auditorium, and a body pack or a mic pack, depending on what you're talking about. You may see people who use that when they are doing a keynote presentation where they're going to be talking for an hour or so. They don't want to be tied to the podium. Those are not the types of microphones that we typically use. So the two that we're going to be talking about today are the handheld and the stationary. The handheld are probably the most problematic. They're problematic for a number of reasons. And for the sake of this presentation, we're going to think about this little pizza head guy as the microphone. When we hand you a microphone and you've never used it before and we don't tell you how to use it, what happens is our fault, because you're not expected to know how to use something if you've never been shown how to use it. And by shown, that doesn't mean that you've just picked it up by watching someone do it. So as we teach you this, the biggest thing to keep in mind is to keep it close to your face, which can be difficult because we like to talk with our hands. And if we talk with our hands, then all of a sudden our voice is gone. So make sure the microphone's on. If someone is in charge, you may certainly choose to assume that it's on and that that person will be regulating your volume. However, that's not always the case. Watch the person speaking before you to see if they may do something unintentionally to turn the microphone off. So on handheld microphones, there are two very specific places that the on and off buttons are found. One is right here somewhere along where your hand holds, and the other is on the bottom of the microphone. You may find the on-off button there. So watch the person before you to see if maybe they've done something. But please do not tap, tap, tap. Can you hear me? Assume the microphone's on. You'll be told if it's not, and then we can fix the problem. That's just a little bit more professional. Speak naturally. You may not know that your speaking voice is normally regulated to the beat of your heart. So when you're nervous, your heart beats faster, and then you start to speed up and you start to speak not so quite clearly, slowly, and distinctly. I can't even say them correctly. You want to make sure that you're in control of the words coming out of your mouth and that hopefully they come out correctly. Will you make a mistake? Yes. Will you mispronounce a word? Yes. Will people laugh? Probably not, unless it's something big, and then you're going to laugh with them because we laugh at ourselves, all right, or with ourselves. When we make a mistake, we understand, and then we put the audience at ease. When we can laugh, when we do something funny, even if it's unintentional, the audience is now at ease. Keep the microphone close to your mouth. It doesn't need to touch. Speak into it. You don't hold the top of the microphone, which I think you know, that you've probably seen. Most handheld mics are designed to be spoken directly into, not over. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Even if you forget that piece and the microphone's here as opposed to here, it's still better. So keep it close and watch your turning it on and off. I have actually unintentionally turned off a microphone while I'm using it. It happens. Just be aware. And if suddenly you don't sound so loud, double check your microphone. The last thing I'm going to say about this that also pertains to the stationary, you are going to sound loud when your voice comes through the speakers. You're supposed to. If you regulate yourself based on what you hear, it's not going to work for the rest of the audience. You need to allow the person who's running the soundboard to adjust you, or you need to just understand you're going to sound loud. If you sound too loud, and I hesitate to even tell you this, you can back off about an inch, no more than that. Or you can slow down because that will also help with excessive loud. The second type of mic is the stationary mic. Oftentimes, a stationary mic is on a podium. The podium mics that you see that look different from handheld microphones, I know this is not a handheld, they act differently. However, when there is a stationary mic on a microphone stand, almost always it's got this type of mic, the handheld on it. Keep that in mind. So the pros to having a stationary microphone, you don't have to hold it and remember where your hands are. Someone can be monitoring the volume. And if they're not, you can still regulate that yourself. Oftentimes, when you don't have someone monitoring the sound system, they've set the volume to a random person that's part of whatever group that comes up and says, 1, 2, 3, testing, can you hear me? And they say yes. And then they set the volume. There are a couple problems with this. One, generally that's done without people in the room. I know that people suck up sound in a room. The more people in a room, the less easily it is to hear. So if you are in charge of a sound system and you test a mic that way, because we test mics with no one in the room. You need to understand that that mic volume should be turned up just a little bit beyond what you can hear when no one's in the room, because bodies and clothing really do absorb the sound. The cons of having a stationary mic, they're usually set at a standard volume. So if you are not as loud as the person that they used, or if you are louder than the person that they used, you may need to regulate your own volume. You can take a small step back if you need to, or you can speak more loudly. You also need to make sure you're standing up straight, even if you're using a handheld, because it does matter. It affects your voice. If you hunch over, it affects your voice. So here are the do's and don'ts before we move on. Do speak naturally. Speak slowly, clearly, and distinctly. Stay relatively close to the microphone, whether it's the podium kind, the stationary kind, or the handheld. Stand tall with good posture. Don't tap the mic and say, "Is this on?" And then be careful of jewelry that you think may interfere or your style. Sometimes that can interfere. It's less common, but it can happen. Now we're moving into the second portion of speak up, stand out. Your voice is your superpower. Um, the fear of public speaking is still very top to the number one. And it's called glossophobia, which is a word that I actually just learned myself. Glossophobia is an interesting word for this. And the question becomes, why is this one of our top fears? So we have a fear of judgment, people judging us. We have our own perceived inadequacies. We have a fear of failure. We have negative self-information that we're giving ourselves. I'm boring. I'm not interesting. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm not going to do well. We sometimes also think that it's a performance. And when we go to see a performance, we have high expectations. When we treat our presentations like a performance, we have high expectations of what those performances are. So, solutions to that, it's never going to be picture your audience naked. Never. I have a story I don't have time to tell, but it actually made someone more nervous when they were told that. Some solutions are to get out of your own head and focus on your message. For me personally, I don't have a fear of public speaking. It just isn't one of mine. Do I have fears? Yes. But I'm an exceptionally extreme introvert. I much prefer to be in front of an audience giving a speech to 3,000 people than I do sitting in an audience of 3,000 people. If you've ever sat next to me at international convention and I have moved over to an empty seat, it's because I get physically uncomfortable when I sit close to a bunch of people. So I don't fear public speaking. However, there are still some things that I think that you can do to help you. And some places talk about the 3 V's, the letter V like victory, which is voice, visual, and verbal. And we actually are going to cover all of those. But I personally believe that the real solution is to have a belief in what you're saying, a passion about it, and a purpose for saying it. I think that those are important. The 3 V's are important for the message that you're doing. The belief, the passion, purpose, I believe will help you with that fear. So, how to prepare a real how to prepare a presentation? Write it out. I'm not a proponent of reading a script. If you read a script word for word, oftentimes you're going to do this. You're not going to be heard, your face is going to be covered, and you're not going to be interesting because you're not connecting with your audience. Your audience needs to connect with you. I know you've seen really good presenters, and I know you've seen some maybe not so great presenters. The ones that are not so great are often the ones that are just not connecting with the audience. Not all the time, but oftentimes. And the ones that are good are oftentimes the ones that do. They're also the ones that have a belief, a passion, and a purpose. So write out your script. If you're going to take the full script to the podium, and there's nothing wrong with that, please do it in a 14 or 16 point font. Do it double spaced, one-sided paper, hole punch it, put it in a binder, put it together correctly, fold the pages, and practice with it that way. You want to practice with the way it's going to be. And I'm going to say this as well. If you are going to have to wear something that you do not normally wear, that you are going to be uncomfortable in, practice in it. Put on the dress, put on the suit, put on the shoes. Do not practice in comfortable clothing in bare feet or sock feet or slippers, and then put everything on the day of and expect you to do well. You need to practice in what you're going to wear if you're uncomfortable in it. Once your script is written out, read it to someone you trust who will say to you, that was a little fast, maybe slow down a little. I think it was really effective. I especially like the part where you did this. You know, you lost me a little bit with this. Someone you trust. When you practice it alone, practice it looking in a mirror. And here's where the secret comes into for looking at people. You're not going to look at their faces. You're not going to look in their eyes. You're not going to recognize people to the best of your ability. You're going to look here to here, somewhere in this portion of their head. They will not know that you're not looking at them in the eyes. If you're close to an audience, and then you might need to look at a chin potentially, but you never want to recognize a face. What can happen is that you see, oh, look, there's Mary, and your brain goes, there's Mary. You know what? I have something for Mary in the car. I need to make sure I don't forget to tell her. Oh, look, Aunt Jean is over there. Aunt Jean asked me to come to dinner tonight. I wonder what we're having. Your brain starts taking off on these people, and it totally detracts from what you're presenting, and your brain actually starts delving into other things, and it may not remember what you're presenting. So practice in a mirror. Take out the words as you practice because that's helping you be able to speak more clearly. I'm speaking from an outline. I generally do. There are still times that I take a script up with me, especially if I have a time frame. That gets difficult for me to speak off the cuff if I have a time frame. So I like to have a script for that and know about how much I can go off of it. When you take out the words as you practice, it lets you continue to make eye contact with your audience. Please do not talk like this as you're presenting and you keep going back and forth. I call it the tennis move, basically. where you're part of the tennis audience and you're watching this go back and forth and back and forth, people will start noticing that you're doing that and they will start chuckling because they think that that's funny. So be careful with that. We did the eye contact for secret location. I find that to be really helpful, even for me, because I can still get distracted by people in the audience. Now, do I still watch the audience personally? I watch their body language. I was in a classroom for almost 30 years. I like to know, am I connecting with those people? I can tell by how they're sitting. Usually I can tell by expressions on their face. So sometimes I do watch the audience. I don't recommend it if you already have a fear of public speaking. Personal opinion, but it's from years of experience with students and actors. All right, the last thing before we close is presentations, things like PowerPoints and Prezis. Um, do not put every single thing you're going to say in a presentation. There's no reason you can't use PowerPoint or a Prezi, whatever you want to use. But don't put every word you're going to say on that screen, because people read faster in their head than you speak out loud. They will be done with what's on the screen before you're done speaking, and they're going to tune you out, and they're just going to start reading the screens because that's where all of your information is. So please do not do that. Use a basic outline. And when you go to do a presentation, point to it and say, as you can see on the screen, blah, blah, blah. And then you come back to what you're talking about. I'd like to direct your attention to the screen. You can turn, you can look at it, but then come back. So you're looking at the screen when you expect them to look at the screen. You're looking at them when you want them to look at you. Speeches. So now we come back to voice, visual, and verbal. Your voice needs to be slow, clear, direct, and distinct. Your visual cannot be hunched in on itself. You need to stand up nice and tall. You have a better speaking voice available to you when your airways are all opened up. Plus, you make a better presentation visual on the stage when you're standing nice and tall. Body language, your body language is important. Verbal, make sure that, again, your voice is clear. Make sure you're not rushing to the best of your ability. So I'm going to come back to belief, passion, and purpose. Why do you want to present what you're presenting? If the only reason you're presenting something is because you were asked to do so, if that's your only purpose, the only purpose you have is I was asked to do it, the chances of you being afraid are higher because you're not bought into what you're speaking about. I believe that this topic can help people use their voice to stand up and use their voice as their superpower. I have a passion about helping people communicate, and my purpose is to help you specifically be a better speaker and to have less fear while doing so. So I am passionate about this. I do have a purpose, and I believe that you can do something better when you practice it more often and when you have more information. So in conclusion, I just like to remind you, your voice is your superpower. Your voice is the thing that people can hear, and you can make a difference. You can make a difference in your community. You can make a difference in your district. You can make a difference in your state, in your region, and in nationally or internationally if you speak up and if you have passion and belief. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day.